We're heading into one of my favorite times of the offseason where we can talk about and speculate on free agents, draft prospects, and all of that. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about a few more free agent prospects for the Chicago Bears offense on today's episode, not just offensive linemen. There are a couple in there as well. And we're going to look at some of the best draft candidates for the Chicago Bears as well, per a rumor that came out as far as who the Bears are looking at in the first round of this draft. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off talking about, I know that my comments on the whole Myles Garrett and Cooper Kupp thing, they didn't go over the best with every Bears fan. There were a lot of Bears fans, though. They were like, no, Hayes, you're right. Like, we aren't at the place where we need to spend draft capital and free agent capital in regards to trying to bring in a guy like Myles Garrett or Cooper Kupp with the contract that demands that they have, the contracts that they have, as well as what their respective teams are going to be looking to get from them back in any trades. And I know it's unfortunate, right? Like, you want your team to be in a position to trade for all the top names, and it's exciting to talk about and things like that, but it's just not likely to happen. Now, I've said this many times, and my stance on this is never going to change. If it were to happen, cool. Like, we'll celebrate. It's not we're going to look at it and be like, oh my God, you're stupid. You traded for Myles Garrett. It's just, it's going to be some questions about what else you're going to do to fix the offensive line if that ends up being the case. But there are some free agent candidates that do make a lot of sense. Some of these guys we've talked about in different areas. Some of them we have. We're just going to bring it all together. Focusing on the offensive side of the ball. Probably do the defense tomorrow. And, of course, offensive line is one of the first things that most people want to talk about with the Chicago Bears team. But I'm going to get to that. There are definitely offensive linemen on here. But I want to talk about some of the other positions, especially with the Chicago Bears. The new offense, the offensive mind, the offensive scheme that we have in here. There's going to be a lot of names that the Bears could look at, right? And one of the things that people are trying to figure out with the Bears are what are they going to do with the wide receiver 3, right? Of course, Tyler Scott, we heard last offseason he had great chemistry with Caleb Williams. We already had a pretty solid training camp as well, but we never really saw him during the regular season. Now, there's some thought process between just how inept Shane Waldron was as an offensive coordinator for us last year that maybe it's just him, right? He didn't use Cole Kmet too well either for the majority of his time here. But so there's that thought. But I think either way, with losing Keenan Allen, who does not appear right now to be likely to come back for the Chicago Bears, what are some of the other players that the Bears could look at for a wide receiver 3? The draft we'll get into. There are definitely some candidates in the draft. Talked a little bit about them on yesterday's daily episode as well. But I think when you're looking at this one, there are some candidates here. One of the guys that I think could come in and definitely help the Chicago Bears is Tim Patrick. He's also with the Detroit Lions. He played there last year, so Ben Johnson would be familiar with him. But that's not the only reason why he's on the list. One of the reasons I have him on the list is that he's been a durable player for the majority of his career. Other than his second season in the league in 2019, he has not missed more than 2 football games in any year. And matter of fact, he only missed more than two in 2020, other than the 2019 season. Other than that, it's been 16 across the board. Last year, 394 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns in that time on only 33 receptions. And I think as a third wide receiver, especially when you have a young guy like Tyler Scott, maybe even if you do draft another one, I think that Tim Patrick makes a lot of sense. He's going to understand and have a shorthand with Ben Johnson, which is a big thing here. And I think that he'll just understand and be able to add to the offense. We've had players before, right, that just understood the offense. And that's you want those guys around. I think especially as you're looking to bring in new guys, things like that. I think Tim Patrick, 31 years old, 6'5", 210 pounds. I think he's a guy that the Bears could very well take a look at to come in here and see what they can bring to the team and help just kind of add some depth there while not necessarily getting in the way of the younger guys. So he's a guy that I really do like as well. When you look at his career, prior to the last 2 years before last year in 2021 and 2020, this is a guy who also had 734 yards and 742 yards. So, it's what it is. Like, I get it. There were some injury concerns for sure in the 2022 and 23 season where he did not play. But overall, like, I think this is a guy that it can make a lot of sense here for the Chicago Bears. Like I said, low cost. Don't expect to give him a lot of money either. So I think that's the thing that you want to look at for there. But like I said, if you can get over the injury concern, 16 games played last season, didn't play in the 2022 and 23 years. But other than that, I think this is a guy that you can look at a lot, right? So Tim Patrick on the Chicago Bears board. Next up, Juwan Johnson, tight end out of New Orleans. This is a guy 6'4", 234 pounds, 28 years old, right? And this really depends on how much Ben Johnson actually wants to use a two tight end set, which then could affect if they go out and try to spend money on a third wide receiver because they could use one as a pseudo wide receiver. We don't know what the future of Gerald Everett is going to be with the Chicago Bears team, right? So we don't know that for sure. And because of that, and in Ben Johnson's offense and wanting to get creative, I think that we could look to bring in a guy like Juwan Johnson. Now, I'm not saying that the Bears need to be knocking on his door day one. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that he is somebody that could make a little sense here for the Chicago Bears. He's a productive player, tends to find a way to be productive for his teams and gives effort and is relatively healthy as well, which is a big thing that you're looking at there. And I think that it can make a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears here. Overall, it comes down to, like I said, a few things being involved in that. You got to know what's going to happen with Gerald Everett as well. He is under contract next year for $6.5 million. The Bears could get out of that if they do choose to do so. It really depends on, do they see Gerald Everett as being a scheme fit, because he was a scheme fit for Shane Waldron, not necessarily for Ben Johnson. But Juwan Johnson, another guy, 50 receptions last year, 548 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, he's a productive guy, an average of 11 yards per reception as well, in that he played all 17 games last year. And this is a guy that's just been productive. When you look at his last few years in the NFL, in 2022, 7 touchdowns, 4 in 2023, and the 3 in 2024. This is a guy who can come in here and definitely help shore up some things with the Chicago Bears. So take a look there. The other guy, you guys know, Javonte Williams. I've been really high on this guy as being a prospect here for the Bears. The age of 24 is something that really stands out to me. I love the fact that he's a dual threat as well, to be used in the pass and the running game. 513 yards on the ground last year, 346 in the air in the passing game. I like this a lot. I like Javonte Williams a lot for the Chicago Bears. 5'10", 220 pounds. Now, there's, of course, some question on, is it too similar to Swift? And do we want a contrast of styles there? And that's a fair thing. Still think you're going to look at some running backs in the draft as well, potentially. But if the Bears are looking to bring in a running back and they want to bring in somebody who's already been a proven commodity rather than a draft where they want to use those assets on other things, Javonte Williams is a guy here that I think could help the Bears a whole lot. You guys have seen it. You've heard me talk about him before. I have a whole episode in talking about the chance of him coming to this Bears team, because I really do like him as a prospect. Since he came up in kind of some talks, I looked at it and said, this is a guy that I can get with him being a potential guy here for the Chicago Bears. And then let's get to the offensive line. Of course, Brandon Sheriff. This is a guy that I'm going to bring up almost anytime we talk about free agent lists and potential targets here. I think he just makes a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears, and they're trying to get that offensive line in a much better place than what it has been. I think he really helps with that. So I think Brandon Sheriff is a guy, 33 years old, that you can bring in, a veteran that can help shore up that offensive line and do what we need to get done there. I think he makes a whole lot of sense for the Chicago Bears team. Now, are the Bears going to be willing to spend? Do they address it more in the draft? Those are things that we don't really know for 100% yet. But at a guard position, I like him to come in here and help us what we're trying to do at guard. And then, of course, Kevin Zittler. Played with the Detroit Lions last year, can help get us to the place of trying to replicate what they did with having athletic offensive linemen there that they had in Detroit. Bring that over here now to Chicago. Kevin Zittler, 34 years old, 6'4", 340 pounds. He makes a whole lot of sense here for the Bears for me. We'll see if the Bears can go out and get him. But with that said, that's the free agent list. With that said, it's also the draft coming up. And the draft is exciting for a lot of people because that's where the Bears can really help get some young pieces to add to this core that can be here for a long time. And it came out from Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, said this: Ben Johnson is expected to replicate what was done in Detroit and bring a lot of big-bodied blockers. I'm told the priority is interior offensive linemen. There is an opinion the team could look to trade the 10th pick and move down, collecting additional selections and loading up on blockers. If they can't move that pick, the obvious targets would be Will Campbell, which Will Campbell is a guy that a lot of people are mentioning. He may not be on the board, though. But when you look at Will Campbell out of LSU, 21 years old, he's 6'6", 320 pounds. This is a guy who has the potential to be an absolute monster, and I would not mind at all having on it. Offensive tackle there. I think you shore up your tackle positions if you go out there and get a guy like Will Campbell. The question is this Will Campbell going to be on the board? And that's what the Bears could be waiting to see if they're going to move down with their pick and pick up more assets, is that if Will Campbell's there. Of course, if he's not, the next person up that we've talked a lot about recently, Kelvin Banks Jr. Now, offensive tackle as well, as we know, out of Texas. He does have some injury concerns and things like that, but I think if you trade down and get him, and maybe if you just hold at number 10 and get him, I think that can make a lot of sense for the Bears. But if there's the opportunity of trading down, which is what Tony Pauline is pointing to, that's somebody that they can definitely look to get. Now, next up that he has on this list as well, he says the Bears like Josh Connerly Jr. Now, Josh Connerly Jr., for those that don't know, he's not a guy that we've talked about a whole lot here at Chicago Bears Central yet. He's an offensive tackle with the Oregon Ducks, which is Steve-O's team, so shout out to Steve-O if we can get one of his guys in here. 21 years old, 6'4", 315 pounds, another big body blocker at offensive tackle, focusing on that interior offensive line. And this is another guy that you can bring in here that it just makes sense, right? Now, this is somebody that you would trade down for. You're not taking Josh Connerly Jr. at number 10 unless you just feel that that he wows at the draft combine and somebody's going to take him before you can get a chance for him. But there's an interesting point of this. Like, if the Bears are targeting offensive linemen with their first-round pick, there is an opportunity to trade down. Now, of course, they can take best player available, which could end up being somebody else. But Ryan Poles is not one who's against willing and dealing during the draft if it means getting somebody that he feels actually is a better fit for the team. And Josh Connerly Jr. could very well fit that for this Bears team. The next person that Tony Pauline brings up is Wyatt Millam. And this is a offensive tackle here out of West Virginia. Another guy, big, 6'6", 317 pounds. Really kind of better in the pass game than the run game right now, but let's make no mistake about it. He's an All-American for a reason. And this is another blue-chip offensive lineman. He was consensus All-American 2024, Big 12 Offensive Lineman of the Year in 2024 as well. First team All-Big 12 in 2024, and he was second team All-Big 12 in 2023. Make no mistake about it, regardless of where his draft spot is selected to be, Wyatt Millam is one of the best offensive tackle prospects in this draft overall. And that's what the Bears are hoping to bank on if they're going to draft an offensive lineman in the first round. So it seems like right now, and Wyatt Millam as well is right now viewed as a second-round guy, which is surprising considering all his talents there. But that adds to the fact that if the Bears have him high on their list and a guy that they want to bring in, you could trade down. You already have 2 second-round picks, trade down later in the first, pick up more assets, and then draft a different position. So I think overall what you're seeing here is that the Bears have a plethora of options for them to improve this offensive line this offseason. And that's what we want. That's what we need, right? Like, I get it, and I understand the Myles Garrett thing and all of that, but you got to look at every asset that you trade is an asset that you're potentially taking off the board. And while Myles Garrett is a great player, make no mistake about it, he could alter the complete complexities of that defense. You still got to take care of that offensive line. And so if you can't do that, if you don't do that effectively, and that's where you're going to run into some problems with. So let's hope that the Bears are ready, prepared, that they get that together, and overall, it is what it is there. Now, we got some things, a couple of things. I put this at the end of the show because we did do a live stream on this. So for my YouTube viewers, you've already seen this. We didn't drop the live stream as a podcast because there's some stuff going on, so I forgot to do it. So just to recap it here, right? The Chicago Bears yesterday hired Jeremy Garrett as their defensive line coach. And this is a guy he's been in coaching for a while. He adds experience to that defensive line. He's been a defensive line coach basically the entirety of his career as well in multiple different positions for multiple different teams, right? He was the defensive line coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he coached Travon Walker, Eric Armstead, as well as Josh Hines Allen. And then before that, he was the defensive line coach with the Auburn Tigers as well. And he served as the assistant defensive line coach with the Cleveland Browns from 2020 to 2021. So he's coming in here now, and of course he's going to be help. What do I like to say with coaches, right? The job of your coaches, especially position coaches, is to evaluate, develop, and and execute, right? So you want to come in, you want to be able to evaluate the talent that you have there. Who's good, who's not, who can you get things out of? Then your job is to develop them, right? Whatever you see in those players, develop it to get the most out of that and then to execute. Get them all on the same page so that when they're on the football field together, they can execute like a team and help us get wins. Garrett is coming in here for a defensive line that has Montez Sweat, Andrew Billings, Javon Dexter, but also has pieces like if Daniel Hardy stays, Austin Booker, anybody else that we draft, Zach Pickens, right? Guys that we do still want and need to see exactly who and what they're going to turn into at the NFL level so we can know what we need to do with positions and things going forward. So Garrett's coming in here. He's joining a star-studded coaching staff that he's going to be able to really come in and perform. This one was reported by CBS Sports First. And listen, it's another signing that I like. Ben Johnson continues to fill out this coaching staff with people that just make sense, right? And we're actually feel like we're building a staff that's going to be able to play, mold, and get these guys together. Next up, he did hire Richard Smith as the linebackers coach. Now, this is guy, he's 69 years old. He's been coaching since the 70s, right? So you're bringing in much needed experience in that linebacking crew. And this just goes to what Ben Johnson has done really with this entire coaching staff since he's come in. A nice mix of youth and veteran leadership to really help things out. He's going to be Dennis Allen's linebacker coach, so that is what it is. He's going to get to coach, the group headlined by Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. We don't know what the future is going to hold with Jack Sanborn. Noah Sewell, right, is another guy that, the Bears drafted. We haven't really gotten to see a whole lot of. He has 37 years of NFL coaching experience. He was the linebackers coach with the Indianapolis Colts from 2022 to 2024, the Raiders in 2021, the Chargers from 2017 to 2020, and he does bring in some experience of being a defensive coordinator as well, where he was the coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons, Houston Texans, and the Miami Dolphins in years, right? So this is a guy who does have much needed experience. He's a veteran. He's been here before. He's done things as a defensive coordinator. And Ben Johnson just continues to be very smart in how he's built this team up until this point. So hats off to Ben Johnson. I have no qualms with what Ben Johnson has done. I think when you look at this staff, everything it just makes sense, right? And it's sad that feels foreign to some Bears fans because we haven't always been the franchise that have done things that just make sense. Now, we need to do more than that, of course, right? We need to be able to win on the football field. We need to get wins. We need to be able to compete. We need to be able to contend. We need to get that part. But right now, all we've been able to do is revamp the coaching staff. That's the only thing that we've been able to do so far. And I'll say this, the money that's been invested here, the time that's been invested, and the intentionality behind bringing in these coaches has all been great. I have no qualms with any hires that we've done here. Of course, there's some questions like Declan Doyle and what's he going to bring at being so young. But then when you hear about how he's talked about amongst like NFL circles, you understand why he's on the staff, right? So the coaching staff is basically complete. I think we have another positional position that we need, positional coach that we need to go out there and get. But other than that, I think everything's set now for this coaching staff. And that's what you want. We're heading into Super Bowl week. After that, the season is officially over with. And that's when you're going to get to work. And things are going to start rapidly happening after that, right? We have a little over 70 days remaining into the NFL draft. But between then and between, now the end of the Super Bowl and the draft, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So the fact that you have your coaching staff locked in, you got everything all on the same page. Ryan Poles is reportedly getting his extension. All this stuff is coming about. The Bears are in a place where they can focus on the thing that matters the most now, improvement on the football field. They've done the structural things that they need to do to provide a better structure and have better organizational alignment here with the Chicago Bears, and that's great. They've done those things. That's great. That's what we want to hear. That's what we need to see. Now the next step is to go out there and improve the product on the field, right? Go out there and start going after your free agents. Start getting those things together. Start coming up with the what and how and the type of players that you want to attack this free agency and draft period with. But you need your coaches to be on the same page. You need your front office to be on the same page. And now it's time for Ryan Poles to get to work. This has been a very fun offseason already so far to talk about all the changes coming to the Chicago Bears. But the change that we need the most, the change that everybody's waiting for, is the change in the win-loss column, the change in that. So we got to start doing those things now coming up next as far as bringing in the right players so we can start winning a little bit more. This has been fun. It's going to keep being fun all season. We're not done, not nearly done yet, right? The work is basically has barely just begun when it comes to the Chicago Bears and everything that they need to do this all season, but we're getting there, and it's been a fun ride. We're going to keep going through it. You already know we're the number one spot here to talk about everything Chicago Bears. We're going to keep dropping daily episodes. So make sure you guys stay in tune with us for that. You guys can follow us at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, which goes down on Fridays and Saturdays, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.